In order to represent a buyer or a tenant in a real estate transaction in Maryland, you need to get them to sign the exclusive buyer/tenant residential brokerage agreement. This is what establishes your fiduciary duties and the relationship with your buyer. This sets forth how you get paid. This is a pretty important document. So at the beginning, just basic contact information, get all the information from the buyer. If it is two people that are going to be on the purchase of sale, if it's going to be one person, just make sure all your clients go ahead and put down their information and make sure you put your full information here as well. And just to be clear, guys, ultimately, this relationship is between the broker or the brokerage and the client, where you as a buyer agent are acting on behalf of the brokerage. So first question is what you're actually trying to do. In most cases, the buyer is trying to buy a house, right? So it says they're looking for the following type of property. Just have a conversation, and this is where you indicate if they're looking for investment properties, if they're looking for a single family house in Baltimore County, whatever it is that they're looking for, just indicate what you had a conversation about in paragraph 3. Paragraph 4 is really important because in Maryland, it is a legal requirement that you have to have a start date and you have to have an end date on all these sorts of agreements. It's also really important to note that pursuant to an updated law, the term may not be longer than a year in duration, guys. So you cannot have a 2-year or a 5-year brokerage agreement where they're basically wedded to you for that duration of time. So once it gets past that 1-year mark, you just need to execute a brand new brokerage agreement. Make sure you're using whatever updated form may have been updated and have them re-execute everything. It's also a requirement that there needs to be provisions to terminate this agreement. Okay, so typically in Maryland, in most cases, we provide that it may be unilaterally terminated by either party, but you can add some provisions here, or maybe some exceptions. So often I will write, okay, terminable by either party with notice in writing, let's say 5 days notice, something like that, to actually make it maybe not an emotional decision for one party to basically fire the other, but to allow at least a few days to kind of strike some sort of agreement. And I also like to put in the provision, let's say terminable by either party with 3 days notice, comma, unless under contract. Because if you're already under contract for a property, there are questions if you need to get paid anyway. You can't really fire them without there being big consequences. They can't really fire you. So at that point, I would say it's not terminable unilaterally by either party, but rather the parties would have to come to some sort of an agreement to release each other from this obligation going forward. Okay, let's talk about how you get paid. There are 3 ways that you are allowed to get paid in Maryland, and you have to set this forth basically at the outset of your relationship with this buyer. So you can charge a percentage of the sales price, you could charge a percentage and some other fee, or if you wanted to, you could check the 3rd box and just check some standard amount or some flat fee that you want to get paid. So each of these versions is entirely acceptable. Hypothetically, if you wanted to say, hey, I always charge 4%, you would just write the number 4 here and check the 1st box. Let's say you wanted to charge 2.5% plus a $500 fee. You would check box 2, put 2.5% and a $500 fee. Or say you're a flat fee buyer agent, I charge $7,000. Regardless of what the property is, you could just check this and put $7,000. Do not write a lot of flowery language that makes it really hard to calculate what you're being paid. There was a big lawsuit in 2024 where this really got tightened up, guys. So you need to set your fee at the outset. Okay, you are a professional. At the outset of your relationship, you are telling them what your fee is. It's not whatever the seller is going to pay me. It's my fee is X, and everybody knows that actually before you even show anybody a house. So that's an important requirement, guys. You have to have them sign this document prior to showing any houses at all. Okay, Now, this next paragraph is what I call the let's be cool, don't screw me over paragraph, just with the understanding that everybody's working towards the same goal to find a great house. It's going to make everybody happy. Um, and what this does is make sure that the buyer, for instance, doesn't fire you at the 11th hour, and then tries to work out a deal with the seller, cutting you out of the deal and trying to save on the commission, right? So what this does is try to protect us as realtors and say you put 90 days here, and that would say, all right, if we looked at a house together, if I sent you this house, um, you can't fire me and then go through with this purchase unless you wait at least this 90 days. So you can put whatever you think is reasonable here. I've seen bigger numbers, I've seen smaller numbers, but make sure you put something there to protect yourself. Two other things we need to talk about fees as it relates to, or your commission totally as it relates to the lawsuit that took place a couple of years ago. Essentially, A, you have to set forth your fee right at the outset of the relationship prior to showing any houses. B, the fee has to be really easily calculable and sort of firm. The third piece that the new NAR settlement sets forth is that you are not authorized in any instance to receive compensation from any source exceeding the compensation amount listed in paragraph 5A. So if you put 2.5%, if somebody else or if the seller, say, subsequently tries to offer you 3%, you are not allowed to take that 3%. You are capped at 2.5%. Okay. So you cannot accept more than what you put in that box there. Okay. But otherwise, what we need to make sure that people understand is that if the seller does decide to offer compensation for the buyer agent, it will offset whatever they put in section A here. So in the event of sale, the compensation due to broker shall be paid at settlement as a convenience to the buyer. And basically it will be offset against what you put in paragraph A. Okay. The amount of compensation received by broker from a listing broker shall be credited against the compensation the buyer has agreed to pay the broker in paragraph 5A. So if you put 2.5% as your fee in 5A, and then the seller offers 2.5%, that is credited against your fee, and then the buyer has no additional responsibility. But perhaps obviously, if you put that your fee is 4% and some seller only offers 2%, you are to make it clear to your buyer that they are still on the hook for providing that extra 2%, guys. So that's the conversation we need to have upfront. This is my fee. I'm going to negotiate my butt off to get the seller to offset as much of that fee as possible. But if we can't get this from the seller, you still need to pay me, Mr. Buyer. Okay, so that's the really important conversation that a lot of buyer agents especially were avoiding for many, many years. It got the industry into a lot of trouble. And now we're just as transparent and accountable and honest about it as we can be at this point. And I think we're a better profession for it. Okay. So that's the really big kind of complicated piece. You're going to check off any addenda that might be relevant. I often do encourage buyers to sign a consent for dual agency, just in case they want to put an offer on a property and that property happens to be listed by an agent in the same brokerage as you are. It gets even more complicated if you are having a deal where both sides are represented by agents within a team, but you just need to get everybody to sign off on the appropriate addendum. And then, of course, if you, the buyer agent, have a financial interest in the subject property, then you would have to disclose that as well. Make sure that all buyers sign it. You write your company name, and then you as a buyer agent here are an authorized representative to sign this document on behalf of the broker. So then you will have a fully executed exclusive buyer tenant residential brokerage agreement.